Bring in Greg Batista, who is president of G. Batista Engineering and Construction in Florida, who worked on this building years ago, not most recently, but I wanted to ask you, Mr. Batista, for anything that you can tell us about the images, particularly that we saw from the Miami Herald today, the paper reporting pictures from a pool contractor of damage and standing water in the tower's garage. You've mentioned that the rarity of this kind of structural collapse. What have you seen in the pictures and documents that stands out to you, even though we know that this is not the official investigation and we're not saying what a cause is?
Yes, hi. I mean, I've done inspections up and down the coast. I've done hundreds of and even thousands of inspections, of which hundreds of these are 40-year recertifications. And I can tell you categorically, I mean, these pictures do not surprise me for the amount of spalling or the cracking and the breaking of the concrete that was occurring in this building. It doesn't surprise me that the actual pool room would look in this shape, the equipment room. And why? Because a lot of these chlorides, that's the kind of the molecules of the chlorides that are in the air that come from the sea, as well as the chlorides that are obviously inside the water of the pool. They seep into the concrete, and more often than not, when you go into pool equipment rooms, you'll see this kind of damage.
Well, Mr. Batista, would that kind of damage contribute to the erosion of the concrete, the splitting of the concrete? Could it affect the rebar and the actual structural integrity of the building?
Let me go back then a little bit to the basics here, so the viewers can understand. The concrete in a building is basically comprised of two main things. It's basically the concrete itself, which is what you see from the outside, and it's also comprised of steel that is inside, and we call those rebar, pieces of steel, basically. That together forms the actual composition of what we see in these buildings. And as you can see in the wreckage, you can see the pieces of steel sticking out. What happens is that when you have seaside coastal structures, these chlorides in the air, they seep into the concrete, and concrete is inherently porous. If you take a microscope and you go into and you see it really close, you see it looks like a sponge. So these chlorides seep into the concrete little by little, whether it's through direct contact with ocean water or pool water, or whether it's molecules in the air. They get to that steel, and the steel rusts. And once this steel begins to rust, it's like a cancer, and it expands. And not only does it expand as far as the length along the entire piece of steel, but it also expands as far as the volume. And those of you who have seen cars and the cars that are rusting, you see that the paint sponges out. It's the same concept. So little by little, imagine if this piece of rebar, if this piece of steel expands, obviously at some point the concrete underneath, the concrete that's surrounding it, is going to rupture. And as time goes by, as this cancer grows, the structure little by little gets weaker and weaker and weaker, up until ultimately you have a collapse and you have this ultimate rupture.
We've never seen anything like this. So how common is this, or could it be in the Twin building or other buildings from what you've seen here? Again, I'm not saying that this led to it, but you're an inspector and have you seen damage that is so serious that you've demanded immediate remediation in the inspections you've seen because of this kind of erosion?
Actually, I have. I've been doing inspections for a very long time, and there's been a couple of situations where I've told the owners of the buildings, if this is not repaired immediately, that we're going to have to vacate the building, and I'm going to have to tell the policemen about this. And the policeman in this case is the building department. These are the people that are the folks that are empowered by the Florida Building Code and the Florida law to actually vacate the people. So although I have seen collapses before due to spalling, this is the spalling that I spoke about the steel expanding. I have seen collapses in the form of walls and individual balconies and beams and columns and entire, some floors, but nothing, not even close to the destruction that has been seen here. I am not here saying that this was caused by spalling, but I can, within a reasonable amount of engineering certainty, tell you that this was one of the contributing factors. There's other factors out there. Just this weekend, I was at a conference, an engineers conference, and we all pieced together all sorts of theories, and we were able to piece together certain items. But certainly, it was in the consensus where, indeed, this spalling was a contributing factor, and along with maybe design flaws, construction flaws, maybe there was a sinkhole, maybe somebody supercharged the roof and put too much weight on it, and a confluence of these different issues may have contributed to this ultimate collapse.